Today we have an amazing conversation about how complex the human brain is. You're not going to want to miss it. Our guests today, Brandon and Breanna Vales. Breanna and Brandon, welcome to No Gray Areas. So glad to have you here. And I'm going to jump right in and just say that we're going to talk about a subject that I don't really know much about. I was gonna dig into this and explore it a little bit, but I thought I'm gonna be like the audience and learn as we go. So we're gonna talk about attachment theory, how that's connected to choices. But before we get there, we actually have a connection. We go back a little ways, which means there's no way you're gonna stump me with the two truths and a lie, right? So Breanna,
try.
How far back do we go, right? We know each other.
13 years.
Yeah, it's 13 years.
Yeah, wild.
You were just
right?
coming out of high school.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah,
it was cool.
So you were doing something with...
Yeah, anti-trafficking. So I had learned about anti-trafficking in high school and then connected with the aftercare program you were working with. And so you really took me under your wing and gave me a little group to be my committee and made the program a part of what you were doing. Yes. But you just really mentored me throughout all of that. And so I think a lot of the wisdom and discernment and direction that we've taken with Red Light Rebellion now was very much shaped by your influence and mentorship in that time. Which was really cool.
So tell us a little bit about Red Light Rebellion. So Brandon, you're a couple.
Yes.
You're married.
Yes.
How long have you been married?
9 years.
Yeah.
Now,
Crazy.
We're pros at this whole marriage thing.
Yeah.
So figured it all out
9
at this
years.
point.
When did you
You
become
said
a pro?
that 6 months in.
Yeah, you did.
I did,
Okay.
yeah.
Because we've been married
Sarcasm.
31 years and we're still trying to figure it out.
Yeah.
So you've been married 9 years. You guys do this together then, Red Light Rebellion.
Mm-hmm.
And when did you launch that? When did you start that?
Yeah. So I had first heard about sex trafficking going into my junior year of high school at a church camp. Felt God tell me to lead a movement against it. I thought it only happened in Cambodia. So I was well,
me too.
I don't want to go there. So let's forget about this.
Yeah.
And then 6 months later is when my church announced they're helping to launch the first aftercare program for minors here in the States.
Okay.
And then my mom was very excited because she's like, you don't have to go to Cambodia. It's going on right here.
Yeah.
And so immediately got involved because I was like, oh, shoot, I thought it just happened overseas. But now I'm finding out it's happening right here. The average age of entry is 13 years old. So me, my little brother, and our friends were the target for this. Yeah. And so there's a lot going on. You were doing the documentary, the aftercare program is being built. And it was the first time that Phoenix and Arizona had really had a grassroots awareness movement that was happening to say, hey, this isn't just an overseas problem. This is our problem. And so being a high school student, I was like, well, are the high school students being told about this? And everyone's just
who they're targeting.
Who they're targeting.
High and high school.
Yeah. And so
But
I took it very personally. Yeah. And I was like, we need to talk to the students. Yeah. And so everyone else was doing really good work. And it was just really difficult to get into the schools, especially at that time. And so I just kind of took it on myself.
I would guess, jump in, that
Yeah.
when you go talk to superintendents and principals, say, we want to come and talk to the students about sex trafficking. Mm-hmm. That there were some
some walls on it.
Yeah.
In the beginning.
Yes, in the beginning.
Yeah. Now I think because we've had the Super Bowl come through twice and so much advertisement and awareness is done around sex trafficking with that, we noticed that in 2015, right after the Super Bowl came, everyone was way more open to our program. But in the beginning it was really difficult. And so my own school told me no in the beginning. And so then I went to another school whose principal was a believer and pulled the God card on him. And so they're the first school to let us in. And so we built Red Light Rebellion's first program my senior year of high school. Yeah. And then got a bunch of volunteers and family and friends and mentors together and launched it then. And then we got married and shortly after that created our classroom program, which is now what we've been doing since 2014.
So, which means you guys are in, by the way, if you could have a little more energy in that, Brandon, it would help. I'm totally joking for the audience. They need to go watch. They need to go to and you're going to give that toward the end. You're going to give how they can connect to you guys. But you guys bring a lot of energy to that classroom for sure.
We do. Yeah. And I kind of more so got involved too once we got married because I had, pretty much everyone that's grown up post-internet, pornography impacted my life in a negative way. And so I remember going through an initial process of addressing that and thinking man, how do I just felt this conviction of man, I need to do something. God's calling me to do something to help break this in the church. And at that time I was like, do I just walk up to people and be like, hey man, what's your browser history like? I was like, that's an awkward conversation. I don't really know what to do with this. And once we got married, Breanna was like, oh man, we need a demand prevention part for Red Light Rebellion. And that was when we really kind of put the pieces together of, wow, this is something we can actually both do together. And so that's when we kind of like our classroom program got developed. And then we just, everything that I've like wanted to do in terms of brand and just like pumping things up, it just got crazy.
Yeah. Because Brandon's an audio engineer. So then he brought in the speakers and the subwoofer and like the energy. And he would just like go on these almost like rants or jokes. I'm like, I don't know what's happening right now. But it turned out perfect. And then it become part of the script.
I've seen him MC a wedding before, so I know, I know what you're talking about. So do you want me to plug that right now? If anybody needs it?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Seriously, if you need that, this guy's the guy, man. He brings some life to the party for sure. But yeah, a lot of energy then. And so you were reaching a part of the population that they were targeting, but wasn't really hearing about it. So by the way, when we go back, wasn't it cool to be part of that grassroots? Like, I wish there's no way to, I don't know that there's any way to help the audience understand that what was happening in Phoenix then was such an amazing story that other cities in other parts of the world were going, what is going on there? Because this multi-sector collaboration, right? Like the FBI and the Vice Squad and ASU and GCU and churches. Churches were leading the charge in a lot of ways. And that was such a cool thing.
When you were able to get 60 churches around the valley together, 60 plus, to all say, yes, we're going to build a safe house. Like, I'm not sure we've seen a movement like that, especially within churches for that. And that's something I think that awareness is now so much more commonplace. Obviously, there's always a need for more, and different populations still haven't heard all the things. But it was an exciting time. And I didn't even see nearly as much of it as you did, being so much behind the scenes and like spearheading that with the documentary and everything too.
Yeah, it was a good time. It was a good time. But I mean, thank you for what you guys are doing. We're going to jump in that a little bit more, and then we'll get to the attachment theory. So this podcast is about anti-human trafficking, so to speak, but it's going to be connected. In a way. But let me jump back to something you said, Brandon, which I think is really good, and I don't want to just leave that point, because pornography is probably a bigger issue today than ever. Like, I'm an old man now, or I'm getting to be an old man. 51. I'm in the second half of my first century. See, I'm planning to live past on. I can't live past 100. But when I was younger, growing up, if you wanted to get pornography, you had to like walk into a store and you had to look someone face to face. I grew up in a small town and they knew who you were. So, that's what there was a lot of protection against me. I remember the first time I saw something, it was just happened to see something blowing across the road. But that's how we got it.
Yeah.
It's a whole different world now. So there's very few young people that are growing up that aren't having to deal with this in a massive way, right?
Very much. Yeah, we know the average age of exposure to porn is between 8 and 11. And so
oh my goodness.
By the time we're talking to kids in high school, most of them in junior high have been exposed to some extent. And it's just with the nature of our phones and stuff, like literally every person is 3 seconds away from just seeing really intense things. And there's a lot of just voices and agendas to continue to push that. We know that sex sells on multiple fronts. And so there's definitely the pornography industry has a whole like business agenda with promoting that and everything. And so
specifically reaching young kids with it too. They've got strategies behind that.
And so
probably because they know if you get them at that young age, you're going to have them
for
life for most of them, because it's going to be like a cocaine addiction.
Yes.
Exactly. And then by the time
does the same thing to your brain.
Absolutely.
Right? By the time they're 18 with a credit card, they've got a lifetime customer. Yeah. Which is a really smart business plan. Not so great for society though.
Well, and the crazy part about it too is when a child is exposed to porn prepubescent, it affects their brain the same way as if they're being physically sexually abused. And the nature of internet pornography.
Wait, say that again. Because wow.
So a kid that is prepubescent being exposed to pornography, the impact of pornography on their brain is the same as if they're being physically sexually abused. And the nature of pornography is just click, click, click. You're seeing all these different images. Yeah. So the dopamine in their brain is being redlined in a way that is even more severe than taking hits of cocaine or crack or some of these like extreme hardcore drugs. And so now you've got kids that are growing up literally becoming addicted to their own sexual abuse, which is just a wild and horrific thing to think about.
Kids growing up that are literally
addicted
to their own sexual abuse.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Wow.
which is insane. And yet we respond to it, and it's so scary, especially as parents. And like, we're like, oh my gosh, like, no, we don't want you exposed to this. But it's so shame-based that it's difficult. And instead of treating the child as being like sexually deviant, it's like, oh, we actually have to treat this child as being a survivor of sexual abuse.
Well, and man, shame. I was just in a conversation with my sister-in-law's visiting and my wife yesterday. We were talking about how shame is one of the most detrimental things to us. We make a mistake, we do whatever, but it's the shame that ends up keeping us from coming and actually dealing with that so often or trying to cover it up. I
Totally.
suspect that because you're so public about that now, like almost every time you speak in a classroom, you're sharing, hey, this was something was that difficult for you did you have to walk through that?
It was definitely a process and a journey to get there for sure. In all of our presentations that we do on pornography, I do like share my story at the end, because that's the one thing we really want to be intentional about, is relieving shame in it, especially because when we're talking about how pornography does fuel the demand for sex trafficking, those two are like linked in a way you can't take apart.
Yeah.
And the finding out the reasons how someone, why someone is turning to pornography is a really important question, and helping people dig on that is a thing that we see relieve shame and helps get them the freedom that they want. And so I went through a very long process in my early 20s of initially addressing this, of going to counseling and kind of addressing the root issues of even like how the pornography thing all started. And then even went through a process of having just individual conversations with, I think that first year, it was upwards of 40 different people that I talked through, just to be like, hey, I need to clear the air about these things, including family, friends, like mom, dad, sister, all individual conversations. Cause I was like, I've got to take this seriously. I don't want to be, 65 years old
you came clean, if you will, with 40 different people that first year.
Individual conversations.
I was just like, I do not want to be 65 years old with broken relationships and a bunch of baggage and just like things that have gone really south. And so
how do I courage right there? That's the definition of courage, by the way. Kudos to you. Seriously. Seriously. Yeah. And so when you share your story in a classroom, or wherever you share this, it's almost like you saying, hey, let's get rid of the shame. Like totally. I'm telling you, I'm raising my hand saying this was my addiction. Now, what I love that you just pointed out, Brandon, is I think we're finding out more and more with that, with all kinds of addictions, right? No matter whether we're talking about alcohol, cigarettes, pornography, the actual chemical or whatever it is not the real issue, right? That's what you're saying. You had to dig into, or you're asking the question, why would you turn to pornography? Why are you turning to this image to get a high? Is that what you're saying?
Exactly. Yeah, no. And it's interesting. You nailed it totally, Pat, that the addiction cycle doesn't matter if someone's addicted to, if they're turning to drugs, sex, porn, or food
gambling,
or the screen. So easy just to numb out for hours on end. Saw some recent stats that the average American spends over 19 hours a day on screen time. Because there's multiple screens.
That means they're not even sleeping as much as they're supposed to.
Exactly.
Literally. Yeah. Sometimes we're like watching TV and on our phones. And so that like doubles the amount of screen time. But just how easy it is to turn to these other things. Because the addiction cycle encompasses this idea that when we feel this moment of pain, we start to turn into ourselves to resolve our problems. And once we can't figure that out, instead of reaching out for help, we turn to whatever our vice is, whether it's food, alcohol, drugs. And then we try to get that to solve our problem, to feel better. And then eventually it does for a moment, but kind of brings back this moment of pain, which starts the whole feedback cycle over again. And the only way to break out of addiction cycles is, instead of reaching into yourself to try and resolve things, is to reach out to someone. And so most addicts, they don't have a problem wanting something too much. They have a problem managing their emotions and having healthy relationships so they can lean on people in tough times.
So addiction is an emotionally intimacy disorder. It's an emotional intimacy disorder. It's saying I don't emotional intimacy disorder.
Would it be fair to say that probably most of us have an addiction issue of something?
Like, I think so. I think especially with the screens now too. It's just that I feel like that's kind of like a given.
That's where I say that, because some of our audience may be driving right now, listening and going, I don't know if this applies to me. And I mean, I don't know that there's a human that I know, including myself, that I would go, if you're really honest with yourself, you're probably addicted to something. And what did you just say? It's an emotional intimacy issue then?
Disorder. Yeah.
Emotional.
It's a mismanaging of your emotions. Saying, I feel a painful emotion. I don't know how to hold this space and resolve this. And so I'm going to numb out or do something to try to take away that pain. And so although not everything that we experience or engage in can clinically be defined as an addiction, I do think that as just like in the West, in America, I think that we just have a lot of opportunities and a lot of things just at the tip of our fingers to just numb out.
Yeah.
And that can turn into an addiction. So it's like not everyone that's going to look at porn is going to become addicted,
Right.
but there's many people that can develop a compulsion that's short of an addiction, but they're still using pornography to manage their emotions.
Yeah. And addiction is even defined by the point of use where your life starts to become unmanageable and relationships get hurt, yourself gets hurt. So that's the point of addiction, is it like becoming increasingly more unmanageable.
You're not managing your life well because of whatever this is.
And there's now negative consequences.
Screen time, pornography.
Totally. Which I feel
alcohol,
food,
whatever.
Yeah.
Many people are able to mostly get
bring
by.
up food.
Right.
Might be much.
I gotta watch myself.
I feel like most people I know are able to manage their lives and still have like a compulsion thing with their phone. So I think that's even hope in like saying that, okay, we don't have to be scared of like being addicted to all these things, but it is like, okay, at what point am I like leaning on this stuff for emotional support that's robbing me of opportunities to have really significant relationships?
So you might say, if you have this compulsion that's maybe leading you toward not managing your life well, you should probably be aware, because you're either addicted or you're getting very close.
Definitely a check engine light.
Yeah, check engine light.
Definitely check engine light.
Yeah. Okay, so how does attachment theory fit in all this? First of all, now again, this is what's fun. The audience right now is listening to attachment. Most of them are probably going, attachment theory, what is that? I am too. What is it?
So attachment is, and this whole conversation has been a perfect segue into all of it.
It is.
Attachment.
Thank you.
Awesome job. Thank you so much. Attachment basically is defined by the idea of it is how we connect with others. It is the lens at which we see ourselves and others through, and the way in which we connect with other people. So that's the basic idea for attachment. And we see that there's a few different categories for how attachment gets talked about. There's lots of different ways we can like jump into this, but I think it'd be good to start with just saying the premise that there's two types of attachment. There's secure attachment and insecure attachment. And do you have that quote for secure attachment? At Red Light Rebellion, I kind of joke that we are just kind of packaging, because we take a lot of information that other experts have.
You do what all speakers do.
You take the best of what everyone else has.
Solomon wrote 3,000 years ago, there's nothing new under the sun. So there's not a speaker out there that does.
We're making it applicable for.
So you guys are looking at the best, right? Getting the best of everything and packaging.
So attachment, because as humans, we're relational beings. Like we need relationship to survive. And so attachment is how we do relationships, essentially.
Good or bad?
Correct.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah. So secure attachment is when there's rupture in the relationship. So some type of like wounding or disconnection has happened in a relationship, but the securely attached person knows that repair is inevitable and will be here shortly. So there's confidence in the relationship. They know that, hey, like you hurt my feelings, but I know we're going to be able to get through this. So there's just this confidence, the security in the nature of that relationship.
So there would be, if you have an attachment like that, it's a very safe, secure.
Yeah.
We're going to have conflict at times. We're going to have to deal with things at times. We're going to hurt each other at times, but we'll figure it out.
Yes.
It's the bodily based expectation that connection is inevitable, that there will be repair regardless of, and that we don't have to sacrifice either of our identities for that connection.
Well, that's huge, isn't it?
So big. So big.
Because a lot of times when you're in an unhealthy relationship, one person may be sacrificing their identity to try to make this attachment work, but then it's actually not a safe and secure attachment.
Exactly.
Totally.
I'm catching on to this really quickly.
You are.
It's pretty basic. And so then you also have insecure attachment. So you've got secure attachment, and then there's 3 types of insecure attachment.
Okay, so what is insecure attachment?
Yeah, so insecure attachment, there's anxious attachment, which is where someone is kind of like clingy in the relationship, where when things are not okay, they start to move closer to make sure to manage like, okay, how do we like resolve this? in a way that might make someone feel like, oh, wow, this is a lot. The
Where
flip
it's
of,
like, you're not okay, and therefore I'm not okay either.
So
and
then
so
I'm-
I have to try to fix this
Okay.
type of a deal.
Yeah.
the flip of that would be avoidant attachment, which is there's issues, so I got to get space
Shut down,
until
like kind of a shutdown thing.
yeah,
A little
shut
bit.
down,
Distance.
space, distance, lack of acknowledgement, just ignoring. All of that fit into
Like,
avoidant.
You're not okay, but I'm okay. And I can't be not okay with you. So I've got to like distance myself from the situation,
And then there's a mix of those two. And
which is disorganized attachment.
yeah, so that's where like you may have felt from someone in the past, like kind of this weird push-pull energy,
Yeah.
or it can present in all sorts of different ways, but it really is a combination of those things, which usually
a lot of
is
passive aggressiveness in it.
which
Yeah,
is usually
yeah.
a result of compound trauma.
For someone that has both of those,
Mhm.
that's
Yeah,
doing what?
yeah.
What was it?
Disorganized attachment.
Disorganized
Yeah.
damage. So there's usually some kind of trauma, pretty serious trauma.
Yeah.
A lot
And
of
that,
attachment.
and that trauma is affected how they do relationships. So they don't do relationships really well.
Correct.
They don't know how to do
They don't
relationships
know
very
how
well.
because they've got all these attachment wounds. They don't know how to bond with someone securely and feel safe in that
Yeah.
relationship. So they're constantly feeling unsafe. Sometimes they want to like cling, and then sometimes they want to run away. And
Yeah.
it's like this weird back and forth that the other person, it's just really difficult to know how to navigate that.
It's interesting because he's describing this, and again, like most of the audience right now, this is all new to me. So,
yeah.
but as you're describing the unhealthy ones, or what did you call it? The
Insecure.
insecure.
Yeah.
There's no fully healthy human being.
Mhm.
There's probably some elements of those that we would see in ourselves. Or you may go
Absolutely.
like, I'm pretty healthy and I'm in a pretty healthy relationship. But when you just describe those three, there's like one of them where I'm going,
Totally. And that's where
Mhm.
no one is perfectly securely attached in all the relationships. And we can have different attachment styles in different relationships as well too. And so we may like feel super secure in this one and then like super avoidant in this other one.
Yeah.
Holidays are a great time to see,
Assess
just
your
all of
attachment.
the attachment stuff come up.
So if I
And-
send you 12 texts when you leave here today, you'll
Like,
know
was it
which
good?
one
Did
is
I
mine.
do
Yeah,
okay?
did I do okay?
Like, yeah.
What'd you think?
So when do we need to redo
Do you
this?
still like me?
Yeah. Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly.
So where does that come from though? Where do we build that? Is that something that we end up, at a really, really early age we have it subconsciously, or?
Yeah, really good question. And so
Thank you.
That's
why I like this interview. You keep complimenting me.
Right. It is very much like our attachment is, studies have shown that it's solidified by the time you're 2, starts by the time you're around 6 months old. And so literally before you even have a concept for anything, your attachment is for the most part like there. And then early childhood solidifies those attachment narratives. And then from there, we
When
just
you
kind
say
of like,
attachment narratives, the stories we're telling ourselves.
yeah.
Based on
yep,
how you
yep.
bond.
Also, or like our attachment map. And so we can think of attachment also like a map where you, like on our way here, I like just pulled up where we're at and hit go, and it like gave me a route. There's a couple different options, and our attachment, we can even think of it as a map that's guiding us to points of safety, because our brain is like an anticipation machine. It's always trying to anticipate, okay, what is going to happen in these next situations? How do I find safety, security in these things? And everyone has a totally different map based on your relationship with your primary caregiver in those formative years.
Now you said caregiver. Is it caregivers, or is it really connected to?
So
Really
that's-
connected with mom.
Really connected with mom.
Yeah.
So
So that was another good question.
that was a very
That was
good
a really
question.
good-
But seriously though,
It's both,
It is.
but babies really
Yeah.
they theorize that babies can only attach with one person in their like infancy, and so that's usually mom. Mom's the life
I
giver.
knew we were just secondhand. I knew it. It's always look at Mother's Day and Father's Day. There's a difference.
Way more effort on Mother's Day.
But so I'm joking about that. But there is like
Mhm.
that's somewhat true, and you'll feel it.
Yes, that's
well,
why
and
Mother's
mom
Day-
has a 9-month head start. If you think about it too, like
True.
there's a
Unfair
connection
for you
that's
guys.
happening
Yeah.
Mhm.
that
Yeah.
Well,
is
and
unlike anything
their
else.
baby's cells will actually stay in the mother for up to like multiple decades. And then if the mother's heart gets physically hurt, the cells rush to the heart to try to heal the heart.
Are you kidding
Isn't
me?
that fascinating? So like Charmin still has all the like cells of all your kids
Ashley,
in
Josiah,
her.
and Kyle.
Yeah, in her.
And
then
I
if
don't have
sh-
a single cell. of
not
them,
a
do
single cell. No.
I? No wonder
But-
they're more attached to them.
But doesn't that make sense why it's easier for a mother to attach to the
Oh, yeah,
child?
yeah.
But the father has a utility of protection and providing.
So you're still providing. So some of the narratives they're going to be figuring out with this connection
Mhm.
is going to be if a dad is doing a good job, is helping them understand safety and security and some of those things.
But in and out, I heard one person say that there's a
This is
difference
fascinating.
between, like, this is kind of attachment, it's kind of going off topic, but there's mothering and fathering, and there's different roles. And so mothering is creating safety within the home and that nurturing, where the fathering is almost like bringing the world into the home and exposing the child to almost like the dangers of the world in a safe context and space. That's why dads are throwing their kids up in the air and moms are freaking out and like, let's keep them on the ground. And dads are like doing these crazy things with their kids because they're exposing them to the world in a space that feels loving and safe and secure, where the mother's about that nurturing and that like almost holding. And so it's two different roles that the child needs. The child needs both of those roles from their biological parents. But that like attachment starts at infancy. So as humans, like, we're imago Dei, we're made in the image of God, and God is a triune God. He is in perfect relationship with himself, Father, Son, Holy Spirit. And so part of our imago Dei is doing relationship with one another. And so we need that. That's hardwired into our biology. And loneliness kills faster than nearly anything else in the world can, more than air pollution, more than medical issues and smoking and all those things, right? Like,
and
loneliness kills.
What's interesting is we go back to what does shame drive us to?
Loneliness.
Loneliness.
Exactly.
It's
disconnection.
I'm not going to share. I'm not going to be open. I'm not going to,
Mm-hmm.
So
because it's the shame is the fear that we're somehow unworthy of the love and connection that we so desperately need. And so it's that break of connection. And so as babies, we enter the world looking for that connection, looking for someone to see us. And that's usually the mother. And so the mother provides all of that. And so the mother attuning to her baby's needs, being able to say, hey, the baby's crying and it is hungry. And so I'm now going to feed baby. Or baby got scared, so now I'm going to comfort baby. Or baby is tired, so now I'm going to soothe baby. Like, all of that is what they call attunement. And a mother being able to attune to her child develops and establishes secure attachment, because the child knows I'm safe with mom. Mom is going to take care of me. Now, it doesn't mean that a mother has to do that perfectly. Like, the best moms that attune the best usually get it right about 50% of the time.
And that's
So
for
it's not
parenting in general.
That's
too.
for parenting in general. So that's not like, it's not like, oh my gosh, like I didn't attune to my kid last week.
Right. Rolling the dice.
We're going to therapy now. Like,
you don't have to freak, because no parent does it. I was just in a conversation last night with, again, my sister-in-law and wife, because we all have adult children now, and we're like, man, once you have adult children, you look back and you go, there's no way you get to this point and don't look back and go, yeah, we made some mistakes. But you're saying,
or just misses.
Misses. Yeah. So it's not like someone who's listening has to be freaking out right now, going like, I got to get this right, or my kid's never going to be able to attach to another human being.
But because secure attachment, it knows that ruptures are going to happen, and it's inevitable that it's going to be repaired. So secure attachment doesn't mean that there's not ruptures in the relationship. It means that repair is inevitable, that eventually we'll be able to attune with one another and reconcile that. And so it's not a perfect relationship, because none of us are perfect, but it's that security that like, hey, we can both figure this out and we're going to make it still.
So when we connect that to choices, because again, when we do this podcast, we talk about, it's really about the power of choices and the complexity of choices. We as human beings, again, you said imago Dei, we're created in the image of God. We're the pinnacle of God's creation. We're not just like animals running on instinct. We have the power of choice. But it's more complex than simply saying like, yeah, I just choose yes or no. Because of like what you're talking. I mean, more and more we study the brain, the more and more we're finding out that there's a lot of sometimes crap we're bringing from our childhood, even if we had a healthy one, you know. But we're bringing stuff with us that's making our ability to make good choices more difficult than we think. Is that right?
Or the choices we want to make.
Or the choices we want to make.
Yeah. So, and that goes back to the math.
So differentiate that. I said good choices, and you said the choices we want to make. Why did you change that up?
I think that good indicates morals, and I'm not sure every choice is a moral choice.
Okay.
If that makes sense.
I see what you're saying.
And
so someone may want to do something.
Yeah.
It's not necessarily a moral choice, or like a moral right or wrong.
Yeah.
But they still may be harder for them to make that choice.
Or think about like a marriage, right? Like think about, you get into a fight with your spouse and you're like, I want to go to them and apologize. Now that might be the right choice to make in that situation, in the sense of like, that's going to help create repair. But let's say you've got some attachment wounds in there. Let's say there's some dynamics in the relationship that brings up insecurity. I want to apologize, but I'm scared that they're still mad at me and they're going to like stonewall me or they're not going to receive it. And in my mind, the story I'm telling myself about that is that I'm not worth connecting with and I'm unlovable and they don't like me. Now, all of that can go back to childhood, but that's in a marriage. And so we just remember the narrative. We brought that with us. Yeah. That's implicit memory, like Brandon was kind of describing. Those are the maps. And so it's not necessarily a moral choice of going and saying, I'm sorry. It's that I want connection. It's that connection bid that that's inherently vulnerable. Yeah. And so if that vulnerability can't be held sacred and that's not met with empathy and compassion and vulnerability back, it's a very scary space. And so every time we step into an attachment bid, we're putting ourselves out there. And that's just a very scary thing to do.
So what was the terminology, like the unhealthy? What was that?
Yeah, avoidant, anxious, and disorganized.
Okay. So let's walk through this really quickly because you were just describing like in a marriage, you have this disagreement and you're going to come, but we'll say again for the audience, if some of them aren't married or whatever, any relationship. But we'll say a marriage right now because that's an easy one to understand, but it could be friends, it could be a boss, an employee, parent. Okay. But something like you know that you want to go say, I'm sorry, or make this right. You want to do that. So the three ways is one of them. The one that you mentioned really is I'm afraid, right?
That'd probably fall into like avoidant.
I
think how you defined it.
Yeah, it could be. Yeah.
And that's where like they can present so many different ways, like based on what those wounds are.
What would be the one where? Well, sorry, I interrupted you. You were gonna go deep. I could tell. Go with that. No,
I don't know if I was actually.
I set you up now. You better come something good.
Based on what those narratives are that we have in our heads, like it can, the different ways just from my therapy process, seeing other people process their trauma in different ways, like the stories that we feel in our bodies that start to present in this context. There's a lot of. Yeah.
I think an example for what you were kind of asking is the avoidant is like the runner and the anxious is the pursuer. So in that kind of situation, I like let's say the one person wants to apologize. And so they like knock on the door. It's like, hey, hon, like, can we talk? And they're like, nope, don't want to talk, don't want to engage. Well, then 20 minutes later, come back, hey, can we talk? And now and they do it over and over and over again. They feel so flustered that they can't reconcile this. And the other person is feeling so almost like kind of bogged down or like suffocated that they keep running. So that's usually the dance that we're playing. Usually we're attracted to someone different than us. And so oftentimes you're going to see an avoidant with an anxious, anxious with an avoidant, you know? So those are kind of the dynamics and how that can kind of look. You usually have one person that's more of the pursuer and one person that's more of the, and there's different like just temperaments too. Some people are like, no, I need to take a walk and really think through this and talk to someone and bounce some ideas off of. And that's a healthy way of navigating that versus saying, nope, you're not safe and you're too much right now. And so I need to distance myself from you. So the actions could look the same, but the narrative and the story is different that determines the health of that specific situation, if that makes sense.
Yo, it does. And what's so fascinating about this, again, when we go to the complexity of choice, human choice, if someone's 23, 27, 35, 51, 65, the way they're dealing with that is probably a lot of is going back to what you're saying with this is how they connected, whether that was healthy, unhealthy, when they were starting at 6 months up until.
Totally. And that's, Breanna kind of mentioned this term implicit memory. And it's, there's two types of memory clinically. There's explicit, implicit. Explicit is like giving directions to someone, hey, turn left at the Circle K, turn right there. Implicit is more of like muscle memory. Like many people in military or sports, like I just wrestled a friend last weekend and threw his butt on the, actually he threw my butt on the ground.
Wrestling stuff came back to you?
Literally, it was so funny
for
because
both of them too.
Yeah, for both of us. It just was like instinct. And he actually picked something up that I like used to do all the time that I didn't even realize I did. And I was like, oh wow, this is so crazy. But it's just like, it just happens.
Who won?
And okay. Your boy. I owned him. He thought I let him think he was winning. And then
it did look like, it looked bad for Brandon at first.
But your implicit
memory took over.
It's like the knee-jerk reaction. That's how we're just going to respond.
And we can even think of it like in the context of relationships, like when you're driving, something cuts into the road. There's on one side a woman with a baby and then 3 old ladies shopping on the other side, and you have to turn one direction. What you do in that moment you're not making a decision. You're just reacting. You don't know what you would do in that situation. You don't know how to like what all of the stuff. It's just a reaction. And so many times in our relationships, based on these narratives, stories, attachment, there's an implicit memory that we have of how we navigate relationships where we're not making a choice. We're not making a decision. It's just a reaction that's happening. And unless we have awareness around our story, around where we've come from, around what our even feelings are, it's really hard to navigate in ways to get the outcomes that we want or even make the choices that we want to.
But the good news is that we're proving more and more. We had a podcast guest who was my sister a couple months ago, and she was talking a lot about something kind of similar.
Yeah.
But she said the good news is the more we study the brain, the more we see that you can create new pathways.
Yes.
Yes.
So, and even if you're 60 or so, like someone my age, it's going to be harder for me to do that than someone your age because I'm older than you. And those pathways are ingrained if I haven't changed them yet, but I still can. That's the good news, right?
Absolutely.
So PTSD is implicit memory. And so have we ever been in a situation or even any type of triggers and implicit memory? So if we've ever been in a situation where someone says something or there's a smell or there's a lighting, something like that, and we can have a positive or negative response to it. We instantly, like, our stomach drops, our palms start sweating, like we've got a lot of heat, our heart starts beating, and we're like, why did that happen?
We're not navigating that happening. It's our bodies reacting.
It's our bodies instantly reacting. And emotion comes with that. Narratives and stories about ourselves, other people, how the world works, all comes with that as well. Now that can be a positive thing. Like we might start to like feel really elated and we get a smile on our face for some reason. And there's like a lot of like positivity with that. We're like, oh, what was that? That happens all the time, every single day, every situation that we're in. And so what implicit memory does is it's trying to predict the future by remembering something from the past that was familiar. So anytime something feels familiar to us, our brain and our body instantly goes to the last time or the first time or the most important time it felt that before. And it's instantly putting our brains, our bodies, our emotions all back in that space so that we can try to survive that.
It's almost like the brain is like this huge file cabinet.
Yes.
And it whips that open and it just pulls out that file, and whatever's in that file, the emotions, even if they may be bad emotions, which doesn't make sense for this current situation, but that's coming out with it.
Exactly.
But that's happening with implicit one, that's happening instantaneously.
Oh, those are nanoseconds. And that's not something that happening isn't good or bad. It just is. Yeah. And so our choice in that is, what are we going to do with that? How are we going to handle that situation? And many times it takes a lot of therapy. It takes a lot of introspection and self-awareness and healing in order to be able to slow it down enough to recognize in the moment what's happening and then start to change the narrative. But that has to happen in the context of relationship. That cannot happen in isolation.
Which is why this is so important, because if it has to happen in relationship.
And relationships will hurt you.
How
do you heal that? Yeah. So shame is a social wound. Shame happens because a relationship has been broken. And now we feel we're somehow less than, unworthy, unloved in one way or another. But because it's a social wound, it has to be healed socially. It has to be healed with other people as well, which is Imago Dei.
And a lot of that shame is probably coming implicitly, like something that was said or done to us when we were children. And we didn't even realize that we were creating a narrative in our mind. So
So babies, why attachment's so significant and why they look at childhood so much with that is because a child that's dependent on mom and dad for survival, for food, for shelter, for water, for the basic necessities in life, if they feel unloved, that is life or death to a child, because they literally cannot survive outside of that. And so because it's life or death to a child, that wiring in us never goes away. And so when we feel unloved by someone, if we feel rejected by someone, that's life or death. It's neurological too. So.
Is that why? This is probably one of the reasons why kids are so extreme. Like sometimes a kid, you're like, I told you couldn't have a popsicle. I mean, we all have bad days, right? But they're just like, but like you're saying, they don't but it feels like life and death to them.
Yes. Yeah.
Where once we mature and become adults, it's like, okay, I didn't get a popsicle today. It's not that big of a deal.
Yes.
Right.
And
you should see sometimes.
Well, and that's where it's like, did your parents navigate of like, hey, you can't have a popsicle, and there's still like a connection bid, and like there's still relationship happening, or is it, hey, you can't have a popsicle, ice?
Yes. And now I'm mad at you because you keep asking. I'm going to stonewall you as your parent.
Like,
So
That's
now
life
you're
and
now
death.
you're
that
learning
experience.
an unhealthy way to do attachments.
Well, now as a kid, you have to learn how to navigate that. What am I
Yeah.
going to do with that? How am I going to survive this situation? Because what's fascinating is that when we feel emotional pain, specifically rejection or betrayal, the part of the brain that registers that is the same part as physical pain. And so the brain doesn't know the difference between the emotional pain versus the physical pain.
Really?
Yes. And that's why it's so much life or death for us. That's why when we're
So,
in conflict,
I
it
hit-
is huge.
I hit my thumb with a hammer right here.
hmm
Or you say something if you knew me well enough to know how you're going to just cut me emotionally.
Yeah.
The same part of the brain is
The
Same.
same part of the brain
Dealing
lights
with
up. Well, think
Mhm.
about it. Like, isn't it insane how relational turmoil can get someone to have a physical response of
Mhm.
tears?
hmm
Like they're changing based on just emotions.
Mhm.
Just emotions.
Now, the
Yeah.
cool part about this is that us as humans, we can help regulate that in one another. And that's how that healing happens. So when we enter into another's story and space, and we can hold that space for one another, and we can share our story, and they can reflect that back to us in a way that feels loving and safe and accepting, where we feel we belong, it can change the narrative and rewire the brain, which is like so cool. Also the
Wow.
gospel, which is fascinating. And we have that because of mirror neurons in our brains. And so like when a mom is comforting a baby, when the baby's crying, let's say it's like learning how to walk and falls down and hits their head on like the side of the table, and the mom is like shushing it and like trying to comfort it, because the mom has mirror neurons. So the mom's able to recognize, oh, baby's hurt, baby's crying, baby needs comfort, instantly goes into comfort. So the mom's attuning to that baby. The baby also has mirror neurons. And so now the baby is learning how to comfort itself while the mom's comforting him or her. So the baby's now learning, oh, I can be safe and okay, and I can learn how to calm myself down. And so that's oftentimes what's in the spikes in like the development of kids, is when we get like those really big emotions. But it's when the brain is just firing in like new ways. And so the parent being able to attune and redirect the child, and then teach them, how do we handle these situations? How do we negotiate our life in this way? It's teaching the child how to self-soothe, which is super, super cool. We can do that as adults.
I was just going to say
Yeah.
that. So you're saying
Yeah.
we do that for each other as adults then,
all the time.
when it's a healthy one,
Yes.
when we feel safe and secure.
Yeah.
As you're saying.
And it's to the point that the left and right side of our brain, so the left part is the more logical side, and the one that's interpreting like our words and everything. And in this conversation, as we're talking, what's crazy is the emotional side of our brain. Those mirror neurons are able to see what's happening. Like, you're able to see what's happening on my face, and your face is able to respond to that before the left side of your brain is able to interpret the words that I'm saying.
And the meaning of those words.
That's like how
We
fast.
are fascinating as human beings,
know.
aren't we?
It's so
It's so
crazy.
cool.
And with like that moment.
So I'm reading you before I can logically read you.
Understand.
Yeah.
Yes.
Like there's that emotional, those mirror neurons. And so babies that grow up with a primary caregiver that's able to attune to them significantly in those ways, studies show that their neural networks from their prefrontal cortex to their amygdala are thick. They've got like robust pathways for their prefrontal cortex, which again, no other animal has one of those, just humans do. That's the part of our brain that's responsible for using insight to think in the future, weigh out pros and cons,
Empathy.
have empathy,
regulate our
compassion,
emotions.
regulate everything. Someone is set up to be able to use their brain to actually think and process relationally when they were attuned to. The opposite is also true. When that attunement wasn't there, someone that doesn't have those neural pathways may find in the future that when conflict comes up with a significant relationship, they find themselves going very much that like fight, flight, or freeze space very quickly because there's not as many pathways in their brain. Which is, but again, to the point of what Breanna was talking about and what you were saying too, Pat, is that what's so hopeful is that as adults, we can learn all these pieces of even the narrative, story, all these things. We can, as adults, still reparent ourselves and still invite safe people into our lives to take these steps to become like, have a healthy brain and have a healthy approach and healthy attachment. And
And all of that's called integration. So when our prefrontal cortex and our limbic system are talking like that, and our prefrontal cortex is able to regulate our emotions in that way, slow things down enough to be able to respond and make the choices we actually want to make in a situation, that's an integrated brain. So when all parts of our brain are talking and working together the way they're supposed to be. So Jesus, being a perfect human, had a perfectly integrated brain. And as humans, because of our life experiences, we get disintegration in various parts for different reasons. And so the healing process is becoming fully integrated within ourselves and with other people.
Yeah. And for our listeners, I'm going to use one of my wife's favorite lines. Wherever you're at right now, there's no shame in that. It is what it is. That's what my wife likes to, when my kids would complain about something, she would be like, it is what it is. But that's I think one of you said this earlier on. It's whatever got you to where you're at. Like if you go, well, man, those pathways that you were just describing, Brandon, those aren't developed very well because of how I grew up or whatever. But it is what it is. It's okay. So what are you going to do from here, right?
Exactly.
And there's hope in that.
And it's not an is what it is of like, oh, well, that's just how I am. And that's how it's just going to be is, no, this is where I am. And there's no shame in that. I'm not less than because of that. So let's move
forward.
So let's figure out what does my healing look like in this.
What would be some practical steps for the listeners? Like one of them I think I took, and then you guys give some input on this too. But I was thinking right away where it's just practically just going, I need to just pay attention to that a little bit more. Like I want to just watch that a little bit more. Like when I have that implicit narrative that takes place and all of a sudden I close up, I want to just pay attention and go, okay, what just happened? Why is that? So that's a real practical thing is like, just start paying attention to your reactions sometimes, how you're physically feeling, emotionally, so that would be one. What would you suggest too?
Definitely. Which is really good. I think even with what you're saying too, one thing that I've noticed, first thought actually is therapy. Therapy is just someone helping you guide you through the skill sets of paying attention and having curiosity, being able to help you look at things and dig at it a little bit. And I think therapy has become much more popular over even the last 5 years. There's less of a negative stigma on it and everything. But therapy is just having someone walk with you that's qualified to ask the questions and have a context and be a guide is so invaluable.
And that's why therapy works, because they're attuning to you as well.
So it's almost that mirroring, they're helping a little bit with that.
Yeah. And they'll help teach the ways to be curious. And so you even mentioned like being curious about your body and stuff. I know for me, like in my process, I've learned like, man, when my jaw starts to clench, and like if my fist starts getting tight, my forearms, my calves, that's a sign for me like, okay, I need to take a step back because my prefrontal cortex is about to go offline and I'm going to go like full on limbic. Yeah. And so that's good. Like now I know and have that awareness of, okay, like, because your body will respond before.
You're almost catching it before that implicit piece happens.
Yeah. And so it's tuning into your body first, and your body is going to tell you what's happening and then what your emotions are.
You know, I just learned, like, again, I'm 51, and I think it was in the last year I learned, I started paying attention to that, read it in a book or counselor, so I don't know what it was. But for me, it's right here. I can feel a physical, like in my heart or stomach or whatever's here. I didn't do well in anatomy. But there's something, I start paying attention. I'm like, I'll feel, it's nothing huge, but when I feel that in there, I know something's happening right now.
What's fascinating is 90% of your serotonin, which is like the feel good, bonding, happy chemical, is stored in your gut. So that's why we get gut feelings. That's why our stomach clenches when something like is upsetting us. And so we've got all these neurotransmitters that are actually housed in different parts of our body that then send responses up to our brain and back and forth, which is fascinating. So tuning into the body is huge.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what would you have one? So I said tuning into the body. I just told yours.
No, I was what you were describing. Yeah.
I was kind of describing that. You just succinctly put.
Yeah.
You talked about therapy. Would you have anything to add?
I was going to say also just community is so massive. I think I first read this in the book Wild at Heart, but asking people. I love
John
that book so much. Yeah.
He's actually spearheading a lot of these conversations in the church right now too.
Yeah. Okay.
So he's a great
John Eldridge.
Yeah. Yep. Great source.
Yeah. I remember in that book talked about asking the people in your life what they actually think about you. Just ask the people that you actually do life, hey, what do you actually think about me? What do you like? Do you see blind spots? like, what do you see as my blind spots is probably the better question. What do you see as strengths? What do you see as things that I'm maybe like needing to grow in? And I think self-awareness can only happen in the context of community. It is impossible for self-awareness to happen in isolation.
They can't. The people that are listening can't see me smile really big right when you said that, 'cause it is so true. That is so true.
Yeah, it is. And that's where, like, again, like loneliness just kills on so many different fronts. And that's why it's so easy in isolation to get wrapped up in these narratives, where when we're actually talking through these narratives and bouncing things off people, it's so much easier to get grounded back in reality. And so, yeah, having community and creating a space of openness and vulnerability is, I think, a huge way to, because part of the hope in the strategy and the hope of doing our attachment and everything we're talking about is this idea of reparenting ourselves. And that's the really exciting part, is that we can, so you talked about memories being like in a file cabinet and opening them up. What's really, really interesting is that memories, like that file, is not static. It's not written in stone. And so we can literally go back, and it's not that we are lying to ourselves about what happened or trying to change the details, but it's how we remember those things that changes. So thinking back to childhood and like, oh man, the situation of, you could say like the situation of abuse where like I was alone or like trapped and like didn't have any way out, or like, I was alone in this situation, being able to have someone come in and reparent that with you of what are some of the truths or affirmations in that space that you can remember it differently and that's in the context of a bigger process of, I went to a really intense example there, but that's in the context of like holding space for the negative emotions that go along with that story as well.
You know what's so interesting about that is this is why when you say reparenting, use that phrase. This is why therapists or counselors a lot of time will do something like, what did you need to hear at that? Like you heard this, you know, it was a teacher, a coach, or someone said that. What would have helped you? What did you need to hear that? You know, and maybe it's like, well, I needed to hear that it's okay. You know, you tried your best and you lost, and your value isn't based on winning or losing. I needed to hear that. That's why they do that, right? Is they're helping you reparent.
Exactly.
Which, by the way, for the big, strong, tough, manly men that are driving right now, they're like, oh, we need to be reparented. There's a wounded child in all of us.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
There's a wounded child in all of us. So get
You
rid of
can
that
think-
whole image.
You can think of it in different language too. Sometimes we're like, reparenting my like inner child. That feels like really like weird. It's like, these are triggers. These are narratives. And we can manage our triggers.
Oh my gosh.
Figure out how to manage our triggers.
Yeah. I've watched actually a few like reactions to David Goggins online and from therapists, and some of them were like, yeah, this guy is a little like out there on like stay hard and like all this stuff. But listening to him talk more, he is literally doing this exact same process. He talks about it in a super manly way where he's like cussing a lot and like, man, I'm getting in there. I'm going to these dark places like in the basement where like nothing is good. Like it's just total darkness and depravity. And I'm taking notes in there. I'm like learning what's happening in this space so that when I come out, I know how to stay grounded. And like he's doing.
So for the listeners that don't know, David Goggins is like Navy SEAL, but he was
ultra.
So I'm gonna leave all the F-bombs that he uses out. He uses a lot of them. But he's reparenting. So when he's like running, he always runs, and he's got the little camera next to him. He's like, you know, I was a fat slob and told myself that I couldn't be worth anything, but I had to tell myself that's not who I am. I can do that, right?
Yeah.
And he's reparenting.
Yep.
Absolutely.
Maybe in a different way than some of us would.
Yes.
Right. And like his story, like where he came from and everything is super intense. And so it I think is just so inspiring and hopeful to me that, man, it doesn't matter where you came from. Just this concept of being able to look at the narratives and as an adult step in and be what you needed for yourself when you were younger is so invaluable. And that's what helps rewrite that file cabinet of memories in our brains, which actually changes our future because how we remember the past directly affects how we make decisions in the future.
The choices we choose.
And so many of our relational things that we're responding to, like Breanna was describing earlier too, is we're reacting not to the situation in front of us, but to the shadows of our past.
Exactly.
Wow.
And so think of that in the context of God always saying, remember, 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 remember. And when you read all throughout the Old Testament,
He says that a lot.
it's like, it's not just remember who I am, but remember, you came out of Egypt, you were enslaved, and we took you through the Red Sea, and then I protected you in the wilderness, and your clothes didn't like rip and your shoes didn't tear, and then you got into the promised land. And remember that. And it's all about remembering the story of the Exodus over and over and over again. And what does Israel keep doing? They forget that narrative and they go back to
Or
the
they
narrative.
rewrite the narrative, right? Maybe.
Well, ish, right?
Yeah.
Like it's going back to a shame-based narrative. It's going back to a survival narrative, a limbic system narrative of we had it better in Egypt. We were slaves, but at least we knew we got food.
Yeah.
We were this, but at least that. But it's a comfort level. So our nervous systems can actually become attuned to be more comfortable in unhealth than health because it's familiar.
Yeah.
And so that's when we are familiar with wounding or unhealth or toxicity or like whatever it is, it's more familiar to do that and live that way. And so they had been slaves for 400 years in Egypt. That's all they knew. And we know that there's generational trauma too in epigenetics and how that gets passed genetically from one generation to the next. And so they were more comfortable in that space than in freedom and love and comfort and all the things that, and the promised land, all the things that God was providing for them. And so then it's God constantly saying, no, remember, like we're rewriting the story of the nation of Israel constantly.
Breanna and Brandon, we could talk forever. Whenever we get together, though, we end up having conversations like this, right? It's just like this.
Mm-hmm.
But man, thank you so much. I mean, we could go on and on. Got to wind it down here. Yes, I know.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
sorry.
One more thing. There's one more thing. Okay, so what I love.
By the way, I knew one of you was going to do that. There was no way I was going to close.
I was probably
going to
wait another second.
Yeah.
Until,
So what I love about this, and when I first learned about attachment and trauma and how it affects our brains and relationships, is it is completely the gospel. And so it's interesting because I've wrestled with just like the theology surrounding suffering for over a decade in just like a really intense way and trying to navigate my story and figure out what that means and questioning God and his character and just all the things. And when it clicked, because everyone was like, oh, well, the cross is proof that God enters into our pain and our story. And I was like, that just doesn't feel like it's enough for me, which kind of sounds sacrilegious as a Christian to say, but I was just like, yeah, cool. Like he died on the cross, like he was whipped and all those things. And that lasted like a few hours. Like, cool, like he can identify with my pain, but like I felt like I needed more than that. And it's when someone put Jesus in the context of not just his divinity, but his humanity. And so Jesus was fully human. Jesus knew what it was like to experience disappointment and wounding in his relationships. He knew what it was like to get triggered in his body and have to regulate whatever was coming up for him. And he did all of that in the context of relationship. And Jesus being embodied, Jesus being God in the flesh, knows how to directly attune to us. Like Jesus had mirror neurons. Like Jesus is and was human. Like Jesus is the embodiment of the gospel and all of it. And so to think that like, oh, in each of my experiences, Jesus' brain was doing the same thing that my brain was. Yeah. He knows exactly what that feels like. Yeah. And so it's not just like we have a high priest that can identify with us or have compassion with us and relate to us in the sense of, yeah, he experienced temptation, he experienced these things, but like he experienced what it meant to be a baby and needed a mom to attune to him. Yeah. Like he knew what it was like to have friend wounds. Yeah. Like he knew it was like to be rejected and have that pain, not just in his body on the cross, but in his brain and in his emotions and in his heart. And so that's where it's just like, that just like opened up a whole different level of Jesus and our suffering.
And I think even like he knew what it meant to be in an awkward situation. He knew what it meant to like, we have a resource list for all the resources that we pulled the stuff from that will be in the notes for the show. Yeah. But one of the books talks about how like Jesus knows what it means to have diarrhea at one point. Like Jesus had a full sexuality. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And see,
that he had limits on and had to.
And he knew how to have limits. To say, though,
because you bring up the word diarrhea and Jesus. And some people are like,
it's whoa. This is
but we cannot lose that.
No,
we cannot lose
like
that.
The full
fully
human experience.
Exactly, which is what you quoted Hebrews.
Mm-hmm.
That's what the writer of Hebrews is saying: is we don't have a high priest that doesn't understand, but you're taking it to another level.
We think of it spiritual, and
yeah.
Yes, true. But also very human. Emotions, and flesh
triggers,
and sweat and tears and blood and all of it.
You know what drives me crazy with what we do so often with Jesus in the church world so often is we package him so nice. So
Yes.
so we'll quote Philippians, be anxious for nothing, and but definitely Jesus lived that better, perfect. He lived that perfect. But it was a battle, just like it is for us. He went out often, says he prayed all night, or you watch him in the garden the night before he's going to die. And it's not like he just quoted some quippy little verses. Be anxious for nothing, Philippians. I'm not worried anymore. He's literally sweating blood and ripping up parts of the earth and weeping and crying. And that's what you're describing. That's beautiful.
It's just a different Jesus than is typically described.
Yep. And Jesus he didn't have, I don't know. Let me know if this sounds too crazy. I don't know if Jesus had perfect attachment with the people around him. Like, I think he did have perfectly secure attachment with God the Father, but there's probably things that came up where like he maybe felt.
But he was
trying to attach with broken people.
Exactly. That's my point. Exactly.
Yeah. It wasn't on him. I think he had the narrative
because
of God and because he was fully God and fully man.
I'm just trying to flesh out.
But if we're gonna, because if we're gonna attach well as two human beings, it's gonna take both of us for that attachment to be a good, strong, healthy. Right. So even if you're attaching well, and I've got my crap I'm dealing with, it's not, and that's what you're saying. So he had to work through all that mess with the 12. Well, it was actually more than 12. The women,
well, just think of his family.
20,
and
whatever.
Even through childhood, though, even like before everything we know in the Bible, like his whole childhood, he had a full adolescence. Like thinking back to our childhood and how long that took, like it took just as long.
Well, and I think grace too, right? Like there's a lot of relationships we want to repair and we've done our work in. And yet still, because they're not in that space to repair it, can't be repaired. Like you look at his brothers and sisters that didn't believe in him and like we're saying that he was crazy and trying to like hush him up and stuff. And yet Jesus he had secure attachment. He was perfect in that way and still couldn't then reconcile those things. And so I think it just shows grace on all sides. And then how much more when we are imperfect and we don't have a fully secure attachment with every single human in our life. And so, I think that diving into Jesus' humanity and not trying to Sunday school that or trying to, I don't know, like placate that, smooth it over, like that to me changes everything. And it's cool because trauma, everything we've talked about, is a rupture in relationship. And the cure to that is vulnerability, connection, and relationship. And so the gospel being relational and not works-based and not, I have to do X, Y, Z to be good with God, but it's purely God saying, I love you and I want this relationship with you. The more I learn about neuroscience and attachment and like all this stuff, the more I'm like, the Bible had it so freaking right. Like, how do you deny this? Like, it's beyond anything else. Like, it's just so fascinating. So that was my 10-minute little.
Love
one more thing.
Okay, we needed to say that. So well said. So how do people get a hold of you guys if they wanted to, if they want to connect with you?
Yeah. So Red Light Rebellion, we're on most all the social media. So Instagram, Facebook's Red Light Rebellion, Twitter, Snapchat, Red Light Rebels. I think TikTok, Red Light Rebellion or Light Rebels. Check that. But we do have, like Brandon mentioned, like a PDF resource from like the books and podcasts that are some of our favorites.
We can put it in our description or notes.
So it's redlightrebellion.org/resilience.
Okay.
And so then you can, it's a free download and everything's hyperlinked. So you can just click it in the PDF.
We were talking about today.
Take Amazon.
Yeah.
Oh man.
Yeah. So outside of therapy and what we learned from therapy, like all of that is in all those books and those podcasts.
We're just the packaging.
Yes.
Well, let me make a little plug for you guys though, for their listeners. If you want to give to a great organization, Red Light Rebellion, you guys are doing great stuff. I think only eternity will know how many young girls and young boys have been prevented from going down this road. And we used to always say this in the early days, right? For every one girl that's saved, we'd love to see 1,000 that were prevented from even going into this. But not just with human trafficking. Even in you're telling your story and helping. I mean, that room is full of boys and girls that are already addicted to pornography and just helping them deal with that. So you guys have a great organization. If people want to know how they can give, they just go to Red Light Rebellion, right?
Yep.
And this is a great organization. So I'd encourage people to give financially to you guys as well and be praying for you guys. All right. So 2 truths and a lie. You're not going to stump me.
We'll see about that.
Okay.
I kept forgetting mine, so I had to.
Oh, you go first, Breanna.
Me go first?
Yeah,
okay. So I've performed at the largest outdoor event in the world. I've never been offered drugs. And my life aspiration was to be a hobo in Portland.
You had to have been offered drugs.
Yeah, I was offered drugs.
Okay, that's the truth. So now I got a 50-50. Or is that, did you set me up? No, I got a 50-50 chance, don't I?
Oh, no. Wait, did you think that was a truth or a lie?
Yeah, that's the truth.
That's the truth?
Yeah.
So yeah, that was my lie. So you got that right. I said I've never been offered drugs.
Yeah, and I said you had to have been.
Yes. So you got that.
I've never been offered drugs. That's what you said.
Yeah.
That was her lie.
That was my lie.
Yeah. So she was lying about it.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So you got that right. Yeah. So yeah, but I was offered drugs for the first time on Warped Tour in 2018. I was 26 and I just said no.
Yeah.
So it works.
Okay, there's proof.
She was really excited. She was like, someone just offered me drugs and I just said no.
Is it really that easy?
Yeah, like, because, parents always like hype you up, like, this is going to happen.
Yeah.
You're going to be peer pressured in high school. Never did. And at 26, I'm finally like, yes! I had my opportunity to just say no.
Yeah.
All right. So 2 truths and a lie. 1, I gauged my ears with nails. 2, my grandma taught me how to break pencils with my butt cheeks. And 3, I got arrested for driving on the sidewalk and running into a cone that was hiding the rest of a light pole that had already been knocked down and totaled my car.
That's the truth.
Which one?
The last one. That's the truth.
Wait, no.
That didn't happen?
That didn't happen.
Oh.
Well, actually, the lie is that I got arrested. It actually did happen.
It didn't happen.
I just didn't get arrested.
Because I've known you long enough to know you have.
That's character, Kristen.
You've got a lot of stories like that. So I figured right away that was the truth. But you just tweaked it a little bit.
I just tweaked it, yeah.
You stumped.
Every good lie has a lot of truth to
It's
it.
true.
That's
It's
true.
Well done.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you so much.
Thank
again.
you.
Yes,
We
thank you
were
for having us
Fascinating.
back.
So
And
much fun.
Again, I want to tell the audiences, check out. We'll have it in the notes
Mhm.
or the description below this PDF that you're going to send us, and we'll have all of this. So
Awesome. Thank you so much,
All right.
Pat.
There's so much that I could say about that episode, but all I can say is go to the description and the show notes, and the PDF that Brandon and Breanna talked about will be there, and they have links to all of the things that they were talking about the complexity of the human brain. We would love to hear from you, so comment below, or you can email us at info@nograyAreas.com. Like, follow, and subscribe, and share No Gray Areas.